Okay.
Okay. Okay, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is 7:02 p.m. on a Tuesday, March 29th. It's a planning board meeting for the village of Airmont. I'd like to invite you all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Do you have a flag, Suzanne?
No, but I'll get it. Hold on, I forgot.
Wait, I got one.
Oh, John has one. Oh, there you go. John to the rescue.
Okay,
Okay,
so do I. Two flags.
okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
Flag.
the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty,
and justice for all.
for all. Okay, thank you for that.
No problem.
Okay, I'll do the roll call. Chairman Freeland,
Here,
member Cornelius,
Here.
member Roth,
Here.
member Hawk,
Here.
and member Grimberger.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, everyone's here.
okay,
There's two sets of minutes. One is from February 24th, and Yehuda and John, you have to abstain because you weren't at the meeting. And then there's also the meeting from last week, continuing everything. So but we have to do them individually, Yehuda.
okay. So I guess one of the other three who was there can do that for the, what was the date of the February one? 24th?
February 24th, planning board meeting.
Should we do the February one first?
Yes.
Because then I can make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the February 24th, 2022 planning board meeting.
Okay, I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? That's just you, Maurice, because there's only the three of you.
Okay. In
Okay.
favor.
All right. And now, last week's meeting, March 24th.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the March 24th, 2022 planning board meeting. I did read them. They're
Second.
very, very brief, but Russell seconded them. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
Okay. All right. So that's done.
good.
So we're,
Fine. Yeah, so I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing for base medrash of Airmont at 16 Murray Drive. It's a residential house of worship, and the amended site plan is to add a mikveh as an accessory use.
okay. I don't know who's on for the applicant. Rachel, is that you?
I'm on. Rachel Maurice from Civil Tech Engineering and Surveying PC, 139 Lafayette Avenue, Suffern, New York. The attorney apparently is on a plane coming back and his flight got delayed. So we are going to proceed without him. I don't think it should be too much of an issue, but if there's certain things that start to have questions that we can't answer, we'll address it as we go. We are here today for an amended site plan for a house of worship that's located at 16 Murray Drive in Airmont. Previously, the site plan was before the board for a residential place of worship. I was not the engineer on that project. At this time, the application is to add a mikveh to the existing use. The lots in the R25 zone. Originally, the application was around 2009, 2010 with Mr. Salentano. By adding the mikveh, there is no additional parking proposed because the mikveh is only serving as an accessory to the current use. So it's not adding an additional, it's not adding additional congregants or anything to the use. The existing sewer and water is going to remain in use. The stormwater is designed for zero net increase in runoff. And there are a couple of variances that will be required for the development coverage, the FAR and parking. And a variance for the residential house of worship exceeding 1,400 square feet. I'm gonna see if I can share just to show you where it is. Oh, sorry.
Okay, go ahead. You can share now.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So I'll zoom in a little bit. So the property is located on the corner of Murray Drive and Laura Drive. They're kind of like, this would have been the original house before the application in 2009. And then this building here is the addition, that's the house of worship. Since that time, the application today is for this addition for the mikvah. It's 31 feet by 24 feet behind the building. So when you're driving by, it is in the back. And then this house is now the rabbi's residence. And so they're proposing a deck for the rabbi because this in the back is where his deck is now. That's where the mikvah will go. So that it has less impact on any neighbors, and the deck will come onto the side. This is the parking lot that is existing. And in his driveway, he has a 2-car garage, and then there is room for 4 parking spaces in the driveway, just to give you a point of reference of where we are and what is proposed. Now, any questions you have, I'm happy to go through.
So there are 10 parking spaces total? I thought I saw 12.
So there are 15 spaces required and 12 spaces provided. So we are actually requesting a parking waiver because we're within we're within the amount that you can grant. Previously, there was a parking waiver granted, and now we would also request it again for this change.
So the 12 includes the 2 in the garage.
Correct. And there's 2 spaces that would have been, those are the 2 that are required for the residential component.
How many were required for the house of worship part?
The house of worship requires 13 spaces and the residential component requires 2. So a total of 15.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as I said, this is an existing congregation, an existing house of worship. So they are already going to this shul either way, whether the mikveh is there or not. And from the conversations that I've had, this is just to be, there's actually a note on the plan that the mikveh is only for congregant use. So nobody can come here just to go to the mikveh. It's just if they are there ready for their daily visit, they can use it, but they can't, they're not going there for that specifically. They're not bringing in new people.
Did the original project, I don't know if you would know this, did the original project require variances?
Originally okay, I can give you some information about the original one. So originally they did have, it looks like they had just they had the waiver for the parking, and let me pull up the original plan and I can check again. Sorry, 1 second. I'm just trying to find the old plan instead of my new one.
On the original house of worship resolution from the planning board in 2010, it doesn't mention anything about zoning.
That I noticed that too, but I was just curious if
That's true. Unless there was a separate resolution.
Usually the resolution for planning will reference that they're the ZBA resolution. At least we do that now. I can't speak for back then when I wasn't here, but I don't believe there was one when we were in CDRC. I believe I
No,
checked everything.
I
and
think
never
that
found
they
it.
just had the parking waiver. And so now the variances that we're requesting is for the rear yard, which is actually an existing condition because of the way the parking is. We are requesting a variance for the development coverage. We're exceeding it by 3%. So not significant, but we are exceeding the 35% that's permitted. And the FAR, we're allowed 0.2 and we're requesting 0.23. So those are the differences. And then I think that the section of the code that has about the house of worship being greater than 1,400 square feet, my understanding is that that section of the code changed, that wasn't part of their original application, but based on the code today, that's why there's a variance for the residential house of worship being greater than 1,400 square feet. So I think that maybe Dan or Valerie maybe can clarify that, but I think that the code was after the
Well,
original,
Um,
or we just missed
that-
it in the
that-
past.
that-
I don't,
this is a very important issue that we gotta figure out. If the variance that the last variance is the one that you said, because I think I heard you say because of the change in the code that it's now required. So we entered into, we being the village board, entered into an agreement with the federal government that any change that related to amendments that occurred to the zoning code on September 4th, 2018 were inapplicable, stricken, and that the prior code, what is referred to as the 2007 code, applies. So if the variance that you are unsure of is contained within the version of the code that was adopted in 2018, it would be impermissible. Not, well, it's not impermissible because we're not making you do it. It would be unnecessary
okay.
to have to comply with that on your end, and it would be impermissible on our end to require you
Okay,
to comply with that.
so we will definitely get that
So
straightened out.
there's, and Dan, looking at the judgment, there is something with that particular section. And it says something like, for establishments of any residential place of worship that exceeds 1,400 square feet, an applicant shall obtain site plan approval. It's a little confusing, and I think that's, I mean, because in my memo, I noted the same zoning variances that Rachel brought up, but it is a little confusing as to which ones actually apply based upon the agreement with the federal government. So it is something that I think maybe Lou or the village or somebody's going to need to look into further with this particular application. Because I think there's even the federal government requested some changes to the code when that code was originally adopted. So it's not even like the village is going to take the original language. There is seems to be some changes to that as well.
Yeah, but yeah, okay.
I mean, I think it's just something we're going to have to look into.
The main issue is if any of these variances relate to changes that were made on September 4th, 2018, subject to what you just said, if there is in fact carve outs in the agreement. It's not a long agreement, so it shouldn't be too difficult for Lou to figure out. They may not need to apply for that variance, or sounds like that's the only one that's in dispute, but I don't know, or in question.
Okay,
I think that it's something that we could address between now and ZBA. And maybe Lou can research which one applies. I'm glad to know I'm not the only one that's confused about it.
is this the first time since 2018 this has come up?
Yes, that I'm aware of.
Okay. Okay, any other comments from anybody? Valerie, any comments on the application?
No, just a couple, just a couple comments, and that really dealt with if the applicant is proposing any landscaping or lighting, and in addition to what they already have on site. If so, if the applicant could provide additional information on the lighting plan or landscaping plan. If they're not proposing any, then that's fine as well. It's just, trying to clarify if any would be proposed. And then just updating the site plan states that 12 parking spots will be provided, but the bulk table states 9 spots, and it's just kind of clarifying the record on that and just updating the bulk table.
I will update the bulk table to reflect the 12 that are provided, and that way it falls within the waiver instead.
I guess the only thing about the parking, the Tallman Fire Department has a memo dated March 18th. And it said, as we stated in our letters of December 9, 2021 and January 24, 2022, inadequate parking and access have been a chronic problem. So on and so forth.
They say it's been a chronic problem for other places, right?
Yeah.
And other similar projects.
Mhm.
So as I mentioned, the mikveh use itself isn't actually creating the additional need for parking. This is based on the parking, because they're not bringing in any additional congregants. It's what's there. I know there's a question about the parking in front of the garage. The 2 garage spaces are only for the rabbi. And this is primarily for the residents that are in close proximity to the shul. So this is the parking spaces that are there are what was previously provided and approved originally.
Will we be able to use, Dan, we'll be able to use the waiver from the previous waiver about the parking?
What do you mean by use the previous waiver?
It was waived already. It was, they needed more parking previously, it was waived. Am I understanding?
So we are now calculating it,
new
we're including the square footage of the mikveh, but we are sharing to you our explanation as to why we believe that the parking, we don't need additional parking, is that we're not bringing in extra congregants because they're coming for shul and then using the mikveh. It's a common use instead of, they're not coming just for the mikveh. So they were already coming for the shul. They're not coming just for the mikveh, but the required parking is higher because of the square footage of the mikveh being added. So the original floor area for the house of worship, the existing house of worship, from the architect was 1,800 square feet. And the mikveh is 750 square, the proposed mikveh is 750 square feet. So in total, the whole floor area of the residential house of worship, including the mikveh, would be 2,550 square feet. So we based our parking calculation on that.
Before the mikveh, how many spaces did you require?
So on their previously approved plan, they required 11 spaces. But they were only listing,
Isn't it 15 and then you get a waiver? 13,
we require 15 now and we're providing 12. So they were saying at that time that they were only using one, they only had one car for the garage. There's a 2-car garage. So that does count as a 2 spaces for the residential component.
Before there was a 1-car garage and now there's a 2-car garage.
They labeled it as 2 garage doors with 1 car in garage. I don't know what that means, but there is still a 2-car garage. I fully disclose, I have not been inside of the garage, so
maybe we should find out if you can fit.
I don't know, Lou, if you have had to go in. Okay. So we can find out and confirm that there is a 2-car usable garage, but there is still 2 garage spaces. So we will confirm what that difference was.
So again, how many parking spaces are there now? 10 outside and 2 inside?
So, okay, hold on. I'll share the screen so I can like show them better.
But the ones we saw before are all existing?
So these parking spaces, there's 6 spaces here. These are existing. The driveway, we're showing you have room for 4 cars here without any issue. And then the 2-car garage. So this is all without adding any additional pavement. There is no change for this. Their previously approved plan showed the same 6 spaces here. They label 1 car in the garage, but it does label there's a 2 garage doors. And then they were only listing they were saying there was 2 parking spaces in the driveway, but there is room for 4.
Mhm. So it's interesting that they asked for a waiver to 9 parking spots. If now they're saying they can fit 12. Okay, so previously they were required 11 and they got a waiver for 9. And now
Correct.
we require 15 and they're asking for a waiver for 12.
Is it going to be a separate structure or it's connected? The mikveh.
This is going to be connected. And so the access will be inside through the inside of the building. So they're not going to have like they're not coming directly into here. They will enter into the house of worship and enter the mikveh through there.
And the deck, what is there? It's going to go in the back. I see.
Yeah, so there's an existing deck here. This deck will be removed, and so that he still has a deck, there'll be a new deck on the side here.
Okay, anything else? What are we up to? And our engineer for this project is Fusco.
Yes.
Are they here?
Yes, John from Fusco Engineering.
I don't see
Um,
them.
Just wanted to point out to the board that, we have seen this application a few times through the CDRC review. So these are kind of like our additional comments at this time. So I'll just go through them very quickly. We're comment one, we are
And
noting that,
is it accurate to say that many of the comments that were made or raised at CDRC were addressed by the applicant? And
yes,
that's why
yes,
they're not being reiterated here?
that's correct. So there's no point in reiterating comments that have been addressed, and there have been a number of them that have been, comments have been brought up. The applicant has resubmitted and addressed them to our satisfaction. So these are the comments that we feel are almost remaining, and I think they're, some of them are fairly minor in nature, and they're pretty much overlapping with the planner.
Can,
So-
and now if I can ask Valerie the same question?
I mean, yes. I mean, I never submitted something official. We verbally discussed some changes and they did those changes. And so my comments specifically relate to the plan that we have before us.
Thank you.
All right, so comment one, we are noting that a waiver is required by the planning board. I think at the time that we did our March 9th review, the number was a different number than is proposed now because the applicant has found a few other parking spots on the property. So in either event, whatever the final number is, we do believe that a waiver is required by the planning board. A comment two is noting that we requested that an infiltration test be conducted and the stormwater calculations provided to offset the increase in runoff. And just for the board's knowledge, they did that and they did propose a seepage pit to handle the additional runoff. And the seepage pit has been sized based on the infiltration rate provided. So we're okay with that. I think we're asking just to note the date of the infiltration test on the plans. And comment three overlaps with just noting that, if and when the zoning board of appeals grants the variances, which we indicate as two, but apparently there is a third due to the exceeding the 1,400 square feet. So that would most likely be added in there if in fact that's required. That ZBA language be included right on the site plan, the date of the variance granted. So it's actually clear on the site plan that the ZBA has granted those, assuming that happens. And comments 4 and 5 are just related to the sewer district's review for the proposed water usage and average wastewater daily disposal. Those calculations were provided and they seem to be relatively minor, but we think that the sewer district should review that to concur and to show the water and sewer services on the plans. So that's all we have at this time.
So we do have something here from the Rockland County Sewer District a week ago.
Yeah, there's a number of county memos. There's no GML required on this project.
But it does state that 2 additional sewer units will be needed, I guess. What is that? Can somebody explain what that means?
So they allocate, the sewer district allocates like a certain sewer usage for each lot. And if you go above, you pay money to them.
So it's not additional connections or anything?
No, it's just like they're picking like an amount, a usage for like each lot based on the zoning. And if it's a more intense use, they just ask, basically you give them money. That's the impact fee. So if it's the bigger the use, the more you pay them. So like on a case where it's a dormitory for a school, the impact fee is usually quite high. Versus if it's a single family home is what they're assuming based on the zoning, and then that's much lower usage.
Okay, so it really depends on the
Capacity.
potential impact to the sewer treatment plant and, how-
Yeah, and so you pay an impact fee, so that way they theoretically can be making improvements to the system as they go.
Thank you.
Okay, so if that's it,
There are just two other letters if you want to put them in the record, Chairman.
yeah,
Town
sure.
of Ramapo dated March 21st, the standard memo about the sanitary sewer review and the connections must be shown in a sewer study. And then one from Rockland County Environmental Health Department dated March 15th about the stormwater system being in compliance with the county mosquito code, and if should the applicant propose to serve the mikvah via a well, approval is required from them. And those are the only other letters besides the one from Tolman Fire Department about the parking and that the building being sprinkled, excuse me.
Right, that was a recommendation, right? We've seen this before. So Mrs. Maurice, I'm sure you're on board with all these comments?
Yes.
Any questions?
Yep, we will work with everyone to comply.
Are there any proposed lighting or landscaping?
No, the
Mhm.
landscaping will remain as is there and the lighting will remain. So, you know, the addition is in the back, and the access will be through the building, so.
Okay. The big
we
issue
don't
now is the parking
anticipate a
waiver.
significant
Sorry.
change.
So the issue at hand really is the parking waiver, and that you need to go to the ZBA.
The parking waiver would be from your board we would request you to at least give us an indication if you feel comfortable with it before we would go to the ZBA, because otherwise we can request a variance from the ZBA. So if I don't want to go to the ZBA and then come back and find out that you're not comfortable granting a waiver at all. At least if we have an idea, then we know we can ask for a variance. It's just something that we can ask the planning board as a waiver instead.
Mhm. And how long is the driveway? I guess how wide is it also? Over here somewhere.
The spaces that we showed are 20 by 10. So it looks to be about 22 feet wide, and it's probably
40 something?
45 feet on the property. So this wasn't even counting the piece that goes to the road, because that first, 5-10 feet is in the right of way and is not something that we can count for parking.
I guess that parking would concern me a little bit. I guess specifically those 4 spaces, because the 2 closest to the house, I don't even know if we would really consider those to be, I don't know if that's the right word, but legitimate spaces, because in theory, if somebody pulls into and doesn't pull in far enough, either you're blocking 2 cars or, somebody may not pull all the way in and allow the next person to come in. I don't know if I would count those as, 2 spots.
Okay.
I know you have room for 4, but I'm looking at it as 2.
Well, that's fine. That's why I brought it up, to ask and kind of get everyone's feelings, because I'd rather find that out now than 4 months from now.
Right.
Is the applicant on tonight? Can you tell us if 4 cars actually do park in the driveway on a regular basis for the house of worship?
I see Calman's in the audience. Calman, I don't know if anyone on here is from the congregation, because I don't know the names.
Yeah, hi.
Okay,
There's a
who's
couple.
coming?
Yeah, I'm the expediter. There's a couple of people from the congregation here. I'm just trying to see if anybody's available to speak.
I was thinking maybe about the rabbi, whoever lives there, or is, yeah.
And also on the pavement of the driveway by the parking spots, is it marked as parking spots?
At this time, it is not. It's just a driveway. If that's something that you wanted us to do, we can certainly put the parking spaces on that. That's not a problem at all.
Hello there.
If you would be required to add additional spots, where would they be?
There is not a lot of room to put additional spaces. So that's why we would start with requesting either the waiver or the variance. the back where they put the 6 spaces behind the house of worship. These spaces go from pretty much from the building to the back, so there's not much room there. And we would prefer not to have the parking spaces coming off more to widen their driveway in front of the garage if we could prevent it. Also, any additional pavement would also bring the development coverage higher. So those are some of the other things to consider.
Excuse me, Chairman Freeland, there's someone raising their hand. I don't know who they are. It says Bloomingburg Kiosk.
Okay, I mean, this, we're gonna open it to
Okay,
public comment in a minute.
okay.
I have a question, maybe it's for Lou, although maybe it's more for the code enforcer. I don't know how often this comes up, that mikvahs are added to these kinds of synagogues. But do we find that the addition of a mikvah increases the number of cars that park there? Would you know that, Lou?
It doesn't usually,
It doesn't.
no.
So this becomes more of a technical issue than a practical issue.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so
The question is, because it's more square footage, that's why more parking will be required?
Correct.
Even though the usage doesn't go up of the congregants?
Yes, because it's not based on the number of congregants, it's based on the square footage.
Correct. The parking calculation is based on square footage of the house of worship.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there is nothing further, I guess we could open up to public comment.
Okay.
Do you need a motion for that, or
Yeah, I need a motion to open the public hearing, please.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing for this is 16 Murray Drive.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I'll second.
Okay. If anyone would like to speak, you have 3 minutes. Please raise your hand. The first person that's raising their hand is Bloomingburg Kiosk.
Hi. I'd
Can you
like,
state your name and address for the record, please?
my name is Mordecai Lowe. My address is 17 Wintertown Road, Bloomingburg, New York, 12721.
Go ahead.
As a son of Mr. Lowe, the rabbi, I know that the one who has concerned about the parking spaces, the driveway has a lot enough for 4 cars, and even though there's 1 car blocking the front, there is a door on the side to enter and ask the man to move in more to get more space. That's my comment.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that. Say it again.
About the one who had concern there if the driveway has 4 parking spaces and someone blocks the driveway in front, it will to take away 2. There is a door on the shul from that side for the driveway. Also, you can ask the man who parked there to come and move up his car, should be available the space to park. And it doesn't come more men to the mikveh. It's only for their community. Everyone goes to their neighborhood shul. Everyone has their community, their shul. So won't raise the more people. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Anybody else is there?
I don't see, go ahead.
I'll raise my hand. Give me a second. There we go.
Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Mr. Pinchas Warch. I live at 9 Murray Drive, and I'm very involved in the shul. Basically, it's a pretty small crowd. Most of the shul is empty most of the time. On Friday nights, it does get a bit full, but obviously no one parks there on Friday night. There's been no incidents of parking on the streets over Shabbos. And there's even spare space in the parking lot of the existing parking spaces. Yeah, as Mr. Lowe was saying before, the rabbi's son, that if we do need to, we can park in the rabbi's driveway. The rabbi actually does not own a car. He doesn't have a driver's license. So his driveway is always available for the congregants to use. We have had instances where we've had 4 cars parked in that driveway very comfortably. It's a wide driveway, very accessible. And we come generally around the same time and leave at the same time. So there's never been a problem of people blocking others because we just come, do our thing, and then leave. So I think, in my opinion, that driveway can definitely accommodate 4 cars comfortably. If I have the floor, I'm going to just state that we've been busy with this process for the past year already. It's been since the middle March of 2021 that we've been working on this project, and just baffles me that we're still up to, I don't know if you can call it square one or -1. I don't know where we're up to. We'd love to see this project move forward, and I'm sure the board is here to help us out in this. And to us, it doesn't seem like a major project because the shul is established. Whoever comes. It's just another accessory that we are requesting for our religious purposes to be able to have a mikveh together with our shul, and that's what we're asking for. It's not that we're looking to add any members or congregants or make the shul bigger. This is just like you would add a kitchen to a house. It's just another room in the shul, but is to be used as for the same people that are going to be using the shul when they come to shul. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I don't see any other hands raised. Hold on. No other hands raised.
Excuse me, Suzanne, it's
Yes.
Danielle Meehan. I can't raise my hand. I don't have that function. I'm on a new laptop. I'm so sorry. May
Oh,
I speak if that's possible, please?
Go ahead. Could you just state your address for the record, please, Daniel?
Yes, of course. Danielle Meehan, 18 Ackerman Avenue in Airmont. I'm just looking at the letter Tolman Fire Department sent. They've got some concern about the parking, which I know what's kind of been discussed. So can I just have clarification? Is it 15 or 12 that are needed? Was that ever decided? I had to walk away from my computer for a few minutes. How many spots? Was that ever decided?
Seems that with the the additional construction, he added 750 some odd square feet. That would require 15 parking spaces.
Okay.
Until now,
Okay.
until now, 11 were required. They had a waiver to allow them to get away with 9. Now 15 are required based on the new square footage, and they're requesting a waiver to allow them to use 12.
Okay, okay, thank you, Mr. Friedland, I appreciate that. I just want to point out that Tolman Fire Department has some very serious safety issues about this. And I think anyone who runs into a burning building to save a stranger's life is a really brave person, and their opinion about this should be respected. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
I don't see anyone else, Chairman.
Okay. That's it? Okay. Any other comment from anybody?
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
I do see a hand. I think it's a phone number.
There's
Looks
one
like
hand up.
Menachem Ziegler. I see.
Okay, go ahead, sir. Oh, now I
fine.
see 2 more. Go ahead, Menachem. You have to,
Turn on my video?
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
Go
what's
on.
I'm here. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to add a point that I live a couple of feet away from I live at 52 Laura Drive, which is a couple of feet away from the corner of Murray. And I just wanted to say that I and many other neighbors walk to the shul. It's really a neighborhood shul. We're not, there is another synagogue
a couple of blocks away where maybe people come with the cars and they have a full parking lot, and then from time, I'm not so sure. But this particular shul, as from my standpoint, I see a lot of myself, my family, and my neighbors, a lot of walking, and really not such an overflow of parking. Just wanted to add that. And the mikveh is very important for us. Right now, I have to walk all the way to a different shul, a 15-minute walk, and then walk back to this shul. It's a very big inconvenience. Plus, my wife doesn't like when I arrive home too late. So please help me out with that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chaim?
Hi, my name is Chaim Friedman, 10 Farmer Lane. I love the quality of life here in Ermont, especially the fresh air while walking to shul. I've never had an issue with any parking in this shul. And as Menachem said before, the other way is to first walk 15 minutes in a different direction, then walk back 15 minutes because we don't have a mikvah over here. And it has been, as Pinchas mentioned before, it has been over a year, which this is dragging. And just, I don't want to talk in a negative direction, but I feel like someone tries to avoid us getting there, like looking what can be an issue to get there. I'm sure, I wish if someone could just open up in a positive direction how to make this happen instead of just looking for issues. That would be a very big help to even make better the quality of life here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
The one that's very fluent. No?
Okay. Suzanne, is everybody muted?
I thought so.
Okay. I thought I was hearing a lot of background noise.
It might have been the person that was unmuted speaking, but I usually have everyone come in muted.
Okay, perfect, thanks. Is there anybody else who has their hand raised?
No, I don't see anyone else.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So any comments from the, excuse me, from the members of the board or the consultants? John?
I'm good.
Okay.
No additional questions.
No
Thank you.
additional. Okay,
And this does have to come back before the board after they, if they get their variances from the zoning board.
What are the variances they're gonna go for, just so we're all clear?
We're not clear yet, to be honest.
So we gotta get clear first.
sounds like
But-
either 2 or 3 variances they
Yeah.
require.
Correct.
Question is the FAR? That was the one that's-
And I could tell you, this is not the first time that someone was referred to the zoning board and it wasn't known by the planning board, every variance that might be required. Sometimes it's picked up later on, or a change could be made. So it doesn't impact.
Doesn't change our job.
They're still gonna have to make their case to the zoning board. And whether it be for 2 variances or 3 variances.
Is it possibly 4 though? I guess I'm looking at the maximum development, the FAR, parking, and possibly exceeding the 1,400 square feet, or do we know that one is actually not required at this point?
I have a question for the parking. They're hoping that we would take care of the parking. They won't need a variance for that.
The bulk table was an error that was before. So now we have 12 that are provided out of the 15. So it would be within a waiver. But yeah, if we kind of had an idea that there wasn't enough votes here for a waiver. I believe we could, I mean, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no reason that we can't request a variance, correct? If it's within what's a waivers available, we could just, you're still allowed to give you a variance, correct?
Yes.
I think what would make the board members happy is maybe if you reached out to the fire department and tried to figure out what their concern is.
Okay.
You know, then you can say, okay, we talked to the fire department and everyone's on board now. And
Okay.
I think everyone would be okay with it. Is that a fair statement for the board members?
Well, let's just say if that's the way the board feels, you know, please check with the fire department. Well, you can leave it at that.
We have the option to vote on the waiver tonight and then refer them to the zoning board.
I think they're asking, they're trying to get a sense, otherwise they're going to request it from the
Right.
zoning board, which is where they need a referral from the planning board to go to zoning board from you all.
Right. So my question is, can we vote on the waiver before they go to the ZBA?
I wouldn't recommend that, but I wouldn't have an objection to, well, it depends. How do you feel? I mean, do you need to the majority of you need to hear back from the Tolman Fire Department before making that determination?
I would say yes.
Personally, I would say no. I mean, they're not really changing much in terms of their plan. If, as Lou said before, the addition of a mikveh shouldn't increase any parking, any practical parking. So I don't see the issue so much, but if, you know, if the others disagree, I'm happy to hear what the fire department has to say.
And I think I heard that from Rachel that they would regardless meet with the fire department and try to resolve it.
Yeah.
I can definitely reach out to the fire department. I have no objection to that either way. And maybe understanding more that where the additional parking need is coming from and that it's just the mikvah square footage without the increase in congregants, maybe that alone will make them feel more comfortable. Maybe that wasn't as clear in the narrative as it could have been. I'm not sure. You know, that's where a lot of times it's easier for, you know, at a meeting where we can explain things and it's not just, you know, a written paragraph or two. It can be so much easier when there's that back and forth. I know that's what we found all the times with these county planning GMLs where they see one little piece and don't necessarily have the whole picture. So I'm happy to reach out to them.
I mean, from my perspective, I guess, I think it's pretty clear from at least the comments we've heard tonight that it's generally a pretty small congregation of, I guess, neighbors, if that's a way to describe it, and their families, and that parking is typically not a concern. But I would be interested, just primarily because the way the letter is worded from the Tolman Fire Department. So I kind of would agree with John, just to get an understanding of, because this is now their third letter indicating, you know, the concerns for, I guess, similar applications or requests. So I'm just curious, what experience have they had that would warrant writing 3 similar type letters with a concern for parking? So I just want to have more of a complete picture. I mean, I think based on what we've heard tonight, it sounds like it's not likely to be an issue with most folks walking. And I guess with the addition of a mikvah, I'm not very knowledgeable on the subject, but you know, I guess the times folks would need to visit or go to the mikvah is not going to be proscripted in terms of, you know, Saturday, for example. It would just spread out visits throughout the week. And, you know, that you're probably not going to have 12 people coming on the same day. So I don't know, that's just my perspective. Sorry.
Mordecai?
I think the same thing as well. Because they're still gonna have to come back as well to the planning board. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So I think let's see what the Tolma Fire Department will come back and say, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, let me point out something that I also thought of. You're not going to be able to close this public hearing because they have to come back after they go to the zoning board, and assuming that they get whatever variances that are required, approved by the zoning board. So I don't know how you can vote without having a closed public hearing.
So you say there is an actual procedural problem with
I think
with my
yeah,
proposal.
procedurally it's an issue, but Rachel, do you get a sense of comfort?
Yeah, I think that with more direction from the fire department, I think it sounds like after hearing the neighbors, everyone's a little bit more comfortable with what's going on. And then if we can get a cleaner letter from the fire department, it doesn't seem, you know, I think it gives us an idea. So for now, we would just really be happy if we could get a referral to the ZBA so that at least we can, you know, keep everything moving. And then I don't know if you were looking to do this, any kind of a seeker determination now or after the ZBA.
And the seeker's a type 2, so.
Yeah, thank you, Val. That has to be addressed before, seeker has to be addressed before they're able to be referred to the zoning board. So that is one action that the board could take tonight. And in essence, it's really not an action, it's a determination that it's a type 2 action under seeker requiring no further environmental review.
That can be tonight, correct?
Yes.
And then once we do it, they can move on to the zoning board.
Then you would, well,
further.
First, my recommendation would be if the chairman feels that we've heard from everyone from the public who wants to speak tonight, that the board consider seeker declaration, or really don't have to do anything, but Val, how do you think it should be handled? Just noting that it's a type 2 action requiring no further.
Yeah, I think that should be fine.
And I don't think you need a resolution to the fact that it's right on the type 2 list.
Yeah.
And then secondarily, you can consider a motion to refer them to the zoning board to obtain whatever variances they require, and that in the event that they get those variances, that they return to the planning board for consideration of approval of the site plan. And then a motion to continue the public hearing. I don't know, Suzanne, maybe you can figure out if it could be to a date certain. Because do we know when they, do we definitively know which zoning board meeting they can make?
Well, the deadline is April 7th for the May 12th zoning meeting. That's one deadline. If they don't make that one, May 5th for June 9th. So that's up to you, Rachel. But we also have to get that determination done that you had requested on this, on the code for the house of worship for the,
Correct.
I don't know, that's in a week. I mean, Friday is the 1st. So I
Right,
can't
but
speak to that.
based on what I'm hearing, Rachel already, in the event that it's determined that they need that third or fourth variance, Rachel's already indicated that she has factored that in.
All right, well then I just need them to submit.
And if it turns out they don't need it, it would just be a removal.
Okay. Yes, then it's a removal. It's not something that we'll address at the meeting.
But
Okay, perfect.
having
Better
said
to
that,
ask for it and not need it. I'd rather advertise for an extra one than not enough.
so do you feel that would be enough time, Rachel, if
I think so, because the attorney supposedly is on his way back
okay.
home
And
tonight. So
and
he
we're-
gives him a week to get his application together, so.
And in a worst case scenario, if you couldn't make it, it could be continued to the next meeting.
Okay, so if you made the May 12th ZBA and received the variance, you could, if you could put everything on the plans of what you received from the ZBA, the deadline is May 19th for the June 23rd meeting.
Okay.
Okay. So that motion would be,
You said, well, I'm sorry, June, what was it?
Okay, the deadline is May 19th for June 23rd, but let me just preface something. April 24th is technically the deadline for the May 26th planning board meeting, but we don't need a GML and you're returning. So if you could get it to me, I gotta look at 2 weeks before the 26th. I think we're cutting it very close, but hold on, I gotta look at a calendar.
but I would say the same thing.
Well, it would be made, the deadline of 2 weeks before the planning board meeting is the same date as the ZBA meeting, the 12th.
Oh.
So that would be difficult.
Okay, so you were saying like if we were on the May 12th ZBA, we wouldn't make the May, it wouldn't be the May planning board, we'd go to the June planning board.
Yeah.
That's
because
fine.
it's too
Yeah,
tight.
because we're not gonna make it, I mean, if that's the day of the meeting,
There's no way.
there's no, yeah.
So it would be June 23rd is the planning board meeting if you want to do it to a date certain. And I would need the submission at least 2 weeks prior to that, which would be, because I don't have to resend out for comments. So that would be June 9th. So that should give you ample time to
Yeah.
put all the, the notes at the bulk table comments and whatnot from ZBA onto the plan for the planning board to view and the consultants.
Yeah, I think that's a realistic timeline.
Yes. So do you want to continue it to the date certain, I guess is everyone's question?
I think it would be, I would have no objection from a legal standpoint.
Okay, so we, you were saying like if we were on the May 12th ZBA, we wouldn't make the May planning board, we'd go to the June planning board.
So that
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Save them with the noticing and all that, so.
Okay,
Yes.
so already dealt with type 2 action.
Did we
Does
vote on
anyone want-
that?
We
What?
didn't vote on that yet.
No, we didn't do the vote yet.
I don't know that you need to do a vote, but it can't hurt.
So the vote is to determine that it's a secret, it's a type 2 action under secret.
It's a motion to declare the application of base midrash of Airmont 16 Murray Drive, a type 2 action under seeker requiring no further environmental review.
Okay, so I'll make that motion.
Second.
Who was the second?
Mordecai.
Mordecai, thank you.
Pick one.
One was so close.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And now we'll need a motion to be referred to the ZBA, please.
Correct.
Okay, do we have to state the date of the ZBA meeting in that motion?
No.
No.
So I'll make a motion to refer base village of Airmont, 16 Murray Drive, to the zoning board of appeals of the village of Airmont.
Or
Sorry?
whatever variances are required.
Whatever required variances, either 2, 3, or 4.
Somebody's typing. I gotta mute you. Okay.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Next.
Now I'll make a motion to, go ahead.
Yeah.
To
You
continue-
know, Chairman.
Hope so. You'll set me straight. I'll make a motion to continue this public hearing to a date certain, which is June 23rd, 2022, in front of the planning board for a planning board meeting for the planning board of the village of Airmont. Do we know if it's going to be via Zoom still?
Well, first
don't know.
off, what time?
So that's the question. If it's via Zoom, it'll be 7. If it's not, it'll be 7:30, from what I understand.
Okay, so that would be the motion.
Mhm.
We still don't know, basically.
No, it's
No.
gonna be a month by month continuation if they do it at all.
Okay, so those are the two options.
Mhm.
Either 7 p.m. via Zoom or 7:30 in person at the Village Hall.
Airmont Village Hall. Do we have a second?
John, you seconded?
Yep.
John was the second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll see you then.
There's really bad static from someone and I'm trying to figure out who it is.
Ain't me.
Okay.
It might
Alright.
actually be Yehuda, I'm not sure.
I think it might be.
Oh, no, really?
Headset, I'm not sure.
Is
Yeah.
it back on?
Yes, it
And
is
now?
you. I don't hear it now.
Okay, so it must be me. Sorry.
It is you. It's okay. I just wanted you to know.
It's probably your headphones.
Yeah, it
Let me try with
might
that.
be the headset connection.
Better now?
Much
Yeah.
better.
Fine.
Let's try like that till the kids get too loud.
Okay. Let me just get the next file out. All right. The next application is the continued public hearing for 10 South Debund LLC, 10 South Debund for 2 office buildings, an amended site plan application with minor modifications. All right.
Suzanne?
Yes.
I guess these next items aren't in our purview with the village engineer. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
But thank
So
you
that-
for being on
Okay.
for 16 Murray.
Thank you,
No
John.
problem. I'm
Thanks,
gonna-
John.
I'm
I'll
gonna
see you
log
next
off.
week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good
Hey,
evening.
John.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so who's here on behalf of 10 South Debond?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Amy Mealy. I'm the attorney for the applicant, 100 Dutch Hill Road, Suite 330, Orangeburg, New York. With me tonight is Rhonda Smith from Leonard Jackson Associates and Calman Herskowitz, the expediter on this matter. This is an application for a renewed site plan application on a matter that had previously been granted site plan application back in, I believe, 2018. At the last meeting that we appeared at, the planning board basically reaffirmed its negative declaration under seeker on this matter. The only changes that we're making to this plan are really relatively minor. There's some changes in grading that Rhonda can explain if you so wish. And we were also changing the exterior architecture of the building. We did appear at the ARB, and you should have in your packets minutes of that meeting with some renderings. They were very pleased. They thought it was an upgrade from the prior application.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
Can you refresh my recollection? Did the board make a motion on that? Or-
Yes.
Okay.
They did. They voted on the negative deck to reinstate it from the prior negative deck of I looked at the minutes from July 29th, 2016 with regard to the application. Yehuda made the, Freeland made the motion. John Cornelius seconded it, all in favor unanimously.
And Val, you were in support of that determination or not?
Yes, yes.
And the reasons why you were in support of that, if you can recall?
Because there was nothing in terms of the changes that are being proposed that would create a significant adverse impact, nor were the changes that proposed going to affect a threshold, which was studied the first go around under the original seeker negative declaration.
Okay. I will have to prepare a short resolution for the chairman's signature to that effect. But that doesn't affect anything for tonight.
We did go back to the ARB. I think I mentioned that. You should have a report from them. And then we did get a county GML letter. And it actually, I think it was technically late. I think it was technically later than 30 days. But regardless, the letter basically is pretty much your standard comment, plus please re-refer to all the agencies that you referred to in the first place. And I did confirm with Mrs. Carley that they were re-referred to those agencies. We have all the agency comments that did respond, and we have no problem complying with any of those comments. So we're not seeking any overrides this evening. I just want to allay everybody's concerns. I know there was a little back and forth with the fire department and the fire inspector. This building will be sprinklered, putting that on the record right now. We understand that the building needs to be sprinklered. Other than that, I mean, the changes are really quite minor. I don't know if Rhonda has anything to add, but this is somewhat like, some of you might remember the Culinary Depot application where we came back and sought for reapproval, slightly different layout, different applicant once Culinary Depot packed up their stuff and went to Spring Valley. This is even more minor, I think, than that.
Yeah, we basically just did a little different grading. Instead of burying one of the lower floor in the front, we raised it up a little bit, regraded the parking lot. And if I remember correctly, we were able to find a couple of extra parking spaces. So we added a little bit of floor area to match the parking calculation.
I have a question. Those extra spaces, are those the ones where the vehicles are parked under the back section of the building?
Yes.
I would like to avoid those if possible. They don't,
Okay.
on your site plan, they don't show up. And it's not a great idea to park any sort of vehicles underneath the building.
Okay.
All right.
Lou, it's Suzanne. Is there anything in Corey's memo you need to reference besides the sprinkler?
No,
which,
he was,
Amy referenced?
he mentioned the sprinklers. And,
There's something about, I don't understand all this, the code class, the
yeah, the
class
codes
B,
were
class A.
mentioned.
I don't
the
know what
codes
all
were
that
mentioned By
means.
the architect were not the correct codes. His corrections for those codes are in his email, in the memo. Some of the requirements for the interior finishes are different according to the code book than what the architect had specified. So I'd like to make sure those changes are incorporated into the final drawing.
We have no objection to that.
Okay, Valerie, any comments?
No, I do not have any comments. The applicant addressed all of our comments from last month. And the only thing that was outstanding is that the applicant needed to, provide comments on the GML. But other than that, and also the fire department and the town of Ramapo Department of Public Works. But in terms of my comments, I had none.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for the record, Amy, the GML was not late. The problem was the submission was submitted late. That's why it's not over the 30 days when we got it.
It wasn't ever, okay. But regardless, we're not looking for
Yeah.
overrides in any event.
No, there's no overrides. Dan, did you look at the prior resolution I forwarded you to look at? There was some things in there I didn't know if we had to bring up or don't bring them up.
Honestly, I haven't had an opportunity. You did that today, late.
No, this was the
No?
other day. No, it's in your packet.
Hold on, hold on.
I wrote FYI prior approval, please review prior conditions. And there was something in yellow. I didn't know if we had to be concerned about it.
Traffic signal?
Yes, exactly. The village's Board of Trustees is hereby asked to seek approval from the New York State Department of DOT to install a traffic signal at the intersection of Debund and New York State Route 59. That was in the prior resolution. That is the reason why I'm asking, because we haven't.
And my recollection is that there were numerous attempts to get the DOT to do something about that.
Okay.
And the DOT, once again, I'm doing this on memory, 6 years ago, was that that it didn't meet the warrant requirements and that they wouldn't consider it unless or until the Dubois Avenue extension on the other side of the road was put in.
Now that you say that, I recall that too.
Yeah, if I may add, Suzanne was nice enough to send me her referral form. It was referred out again to the New York State DOT. And they still didn't come back and say it met the warrants. I don't think we'd have.
No, their only comment was that if a traffic light went in, or no, if an additional traffic study was done, they would like a copy. That was their only comment.
Oh, right, but
that was at the January meeting.
Yeah, that's right, and we reestablished that.
Yes, we reestablished.
Traffic levels haven't risen back to
changed.
pre-COVID levels, right?
Okay. Do you want to go through the GML?
Yeah, I can go through it.
I know you said there were, I don't believe, any overrides.
No, we're not looking for any overrides, but if you just give me a moment to bring it up.
Unless you, Chairman Freeman, want to go over the village planner and the village engineer's comments first, that's up to you.
Well, Valerie said she had no comments, right?
I believe
Valerie,
that's correct.
Valerie wrote a memo.
Can't find it.
Oh, it was emailed. You picked up your packet before.
Oh,
Got it.
it's the consequence of being early. Okay. Let's see if I could pick that up. So I must have read it, but I forgot it. So
I don't, I think Valerie stepped away.
I'm
there's
back.
this. Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay.
here we go. Okay, I found it.
We were just going over your memo or comments, Valerie.
Yes. So this is for 10 South Debund, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so
Right.
I didn't have any comments.
Right.
Except that they needed to address the comments of the outstanding agencies.
Right, so if you'd like, well, Mr. Chairman, would you like me to just quickly go through the outstanding comments in the GML?
Yes, was there a GML response letter from them? Because I can't find that either.
No, we
No.
didn't submit a response letter because we weren't seeking any overrides. So in other words, everything would have just simply been agreed. The first, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 comments are, please re-refer to the agencies that we had previously referred to and comply with their comments, which Ms. Carly confirmed she did, and we are willing to comply with those comments. The comment number 5 just asked to submit a corrected materials for the exact square footage of each building, which I believe, Rhonda, you can confirm, but I believe Mr. Lim did. Number 6 is water is a scarce resource and that they should be reviewed by the Rockland County Department of Health, and that's been done. Public sewer mains, it requiring extensions within the right of way or an easement shall be reviewed and approved by the Rockland County Department of Health, no problem. Prior to the start of construction or grading, we will do a soil and erosion control plan pursuant to the current guidelines. There's no problem with that. No increase in the peak rate of discharge from the site at all design points, agreed. The proposed monument sign must conform to the village's standards, agreed. A review of the truck turning plan must be completed by the Rockland County Office of Fire and Emergency Services, the village fire inspector, or the Tallman Fire District to ensure that it's designed in a safe manner. And you have in your file there a letter from the Tallman Fire Department, which confirms that they do agree with the turning radius measurements. Retaining walls that are over 4 feet in height shall be designed by a New York State licensed engineer, which they have been. 40-foot buffer with landscape is required between any principal use in the NS district and any adjoining residentially zoned properties. I believe that we have supplemented the landscaping plan to show that. Is that correct, Rhonda?
I'm not sure. I'm filling in for Justin, and I didn't check on that, but I'll make sure that we
If it
have it.
hasn't been,
It will be.
It will be prior to any signing of the site plan. We don't have any problem with that.
Amy, it's Suzanne. I don't mean to interrupt you. Number 5 of the GML with the square footage, was that the corrected plan for this meeting that was submitted? I just want to know which plan you're referencing that it was corrected on.
What's the latest date on the plan, Rhonda? Because I know Justin submitted that a couple of weeks ago.
It's, I believe, the one that you submitted for this meeting. I didn't bring the plan home. I just brought all the memos.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have the plan home with me either.
So I just want to be sure for the record and for the minutes that I know which date the correct plan was corrected for, the last submission date, revised date, I mean.
Perhaps either Calman or Rhonda could confirm the
Suzanne?
last.
Yes.
The planning board, the plans that I have said planning board final 3/10/22.
That
That's
sounds right.
correct.
Thank
That's
you.
correct.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Lou, and everyone. Okay.
Comment 14 is the usual comment about filing the report, which I know that the village will do. And comment 15 is that we have to provide explanations for overrides, which we're not asking for. And then the last comment is not, it's an observation, not a comment, on perhaps clarifying some of the language in the NS zoning district, but it's not anything that needs to be overridden as it's an observation. The Tallman Fire Department, there's two letters. So the first was March 18th. It says that there's satisfactory maneuverability, and they're pleased that the hydrant has been relocated. The FDCs and knock boxes are shown, and we're glad the buildings will be sprinklered. And then the next one says, wait a minute, maybe it didn't look that the current plans indicate that the building will be sprinklered. It will be sprinklered, so that we have no problem with that being a condition of your approval. We're planning on sprinkling the buildings. And let's see. That was the same comment from Corey Martin, your fire inspector. The automatic sprinkler systems, again, I just want to reassure everybody that's going to be done. And the ARB comments you have, and I think Valerie has already addressed her report. Oh, let me just see it. And we have the town of Ramapo. And we don't have any problem with any of their requirements. We agree to the fee. Anything that they wanted on the plan that's not on the latest submission will be there before final sign off. Everything else is really pretty, like very kind of minute details. They deferred to the village engineer as to the adequacy of the drainage report and asked to be informed of all developments on the project.
Eve, I don't know if you had any comments.
I don't have any new comments. My previous letter of January 26th was addressed by Lenny Jackson Associates in their March 9th, 2022 response document. So all of those items have been addressed. I did have one question regarding the architectural, and Lou touched on it a little bit. I didn't quite understand call it the east side of the building. I don't recall that there was ever any proposed parking there. And when I looked at the building footprint, I was unsure of what you were intending to do with that space because I didn't see any parking sketched on the plan. So if you could describe that first level, that would be helpful. And I had noted that the door openings into the building have been shown. And again, they're more so on the west side of the building and then in that interior courtyard. I didn't see any door openings that would go to the east side of the building. So I thought that was a little bit unusual, as you do have a large field of parking there and handicap stalls there. So if someone can just sort of run through the first level and the, access and pedestrian circulation, that would be helpful.
Suzanne, can I share my screen?
1 second, you will. Go ahead.
All right, let me get to the right page here. All right, so back here, there's parking spaces underneath the second floor, right in this area, so that the buildings overhang, and there are some parking under there. And then I haven't seen the architectural. I'm assuming that there's got to be some doors underneath here somewhere that are not specifically shown. And then you have your front, the doors here with the handicap accessibility, and then there's some doors on the sides here in the interior courtyard.
Right, what was unclear was that east portion, you do have handicap stalls there as well as a very large field of parking. So that's why I asked the question. So those handicapped, the patrons who would potentially use the handicap stalls would have to come clear across the width of the building and come in the front door, because the side doors there are upper flight of steps.
Right.
Unless, as you mentioned, there may be some additional rear doors that are
Right.
not shown, but I don't recall, I don't know, Valerie, if you recall, there was ever any parking under the building. So is this a new change, or? am
Yeah,
I
this is one of the
not
new
recalling it?
changes with the new grading.
Okay, because I
Yeah.
thank you for clarifying that, because I had no recollection of parking under the building at all on the
No.
previous application.
Right. I believe there's also an elevator going down to the basement. So I guess cars that park under the building can just walk to the elevator and up to the building.
Okay, so that maybe if just for clarity for final review, that access from the lower level for ADA accessibility can be shown.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you. Those were the only questions I had.
Okay, any other comments? Anybody on the board? Okay. If not, Suzanne, I think we can open it up to the public.
Okay. If
Anybody?
anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand. You have 3 minutes. And please state your name and address for the record. Mr. Robert Ritta, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Robert Rita, 14
Hi.
Clark Avenue.
We have to make a motion to open up the public.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I need a motion and a second, and please.
Need a motion for public comment?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to open the public comment for 10 Debund Avenue.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay,
Yep.
Mr. Ritta.
All right, I'll reserve any additional comments to, I guess, the next meeting when they submit their revised drawings pursuant to Eve's request. So I'll just address the board at that point. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
I believe that what Ms. Mancuso said was that she wanted that addressed before final sign off, but I could have misheard.
Well, I think it would be appropriate if the drawings were complete before the board actually votes on approval.
There's often minor changes made to plans before they're signed off by the chairman.
Right, but I think ADA access and things like that are a little more significant than minor changes or conditions.
Well, I'll let the board decide. Their decision.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I don't see any other hands raised at this
It looks like
time.
Danielle Meehan is raising.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I can't, I don't know what the problem is, sorry.
Oh, I don't see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, now I see your physical hand. I was looking.
Sorry,
for
sorry.
yellow. That's
Hi.
okay. Hi.
I'm Danielle Meehan, 18 Ackerman Avenue in Airmont. I was looking at the ESA waiver application. So it's a little hard to tell, but it only got a partial approval. It did not get a full approval. And it states the letter from the EPA that if there would be further disturbance, to the wetlands, they would need, this would have to go back to the application process. So are the changes to the plans going to disturb the wetlands?
No, no, in fact, we're well over 100 feet away from the wetlands with any disturbance.
Okay, thank you. The traffic in this area is brutal. It is impassable for, I would guess, at least 3 hours a day. I cannot fathom what's going to happen adding 2 new office buildings. What are the people, who live in the area supposed to do? It is at gridlock, and not to mention emergency vehicles police usually have to shut the road down to get ambulances through this area. What's going to happen when the traffic gets worse? In the last 10 years, the village of Airmont's population has increased by 12%, right? And I think it's going to continue increasing. So if there is not, something isn't done about a traffic light, what's going to happen?
But just to be clear, it's not up to the village to get the traffic light. It's up to the DOT to approve the traffic light, and they are not approving it at this juncture.
Right. The problem though, Dan, is that no one's actually submitted anything to them. There hasn't been a traffic study done in over 7 years. That's why the neg deck that you issued was a joke. That's the point, is that there's been no traffic study done in 7 years. And even the last traffic study,
Rob, to
when
be
this was
fair,
approved, it
to
was
be
all
fair-
based on my recollection that there's not enough warrants, but no one actually did a study. That's the point. And now we just issued a neg deck without any traffic studies done, without any environmental review at all, just simply based on the fact that it was approved 4 years ago. What the hell? Let's approve it again. That's why the litigation will happen down the road, but I'll reserve that to the final comments when we get to the final approval stage.
May I say something about the traffic? I realize that there hasn't been a traffic study in a long time, but the state of New York does keep statistics, and based from 2018, from 20,000 cars got off exit 14B every day, 18,000 cars traveled east and west between Airmont Road and Route 306. This is a very heavily trafficked corridor. A study that was published, I think in 2019, it was based on 2014 numbers, looked at the corridor, the Route 59 Airmont corridor, and strongly suggested that until this situation is fixed, any major development should be held off. All right, this really directly impacts people's quality of life in this area.
Once again, my recollection is that even if the warrants met the standards, that unless or until the Debund Avenue extension is built, that the DOT will not install a traffic light. That's my recollection.
Exactly. That's the point. It's a recollection. It's nothing in the record. That's why it shouldn't have been voted on.
Well,
it's a recollection. And
it's
there's no
recollection.
actually updated information to base that opinion on.
Okay,
That's
I'm
the
not going
point.
to debate.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But-
I'm just gonna have to enforce the 3-minute rule here. Suzanne, if you could just keep it.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry. I was choking and I just drank water. I apologize.
No problem. No
Coughing.
problem.
That's why I put myself.
The
on mute.
back and forth is something we try to avoid. So
Okay.
is there anyone else who has their hand up who would like to say something?
I do not see any other hands up at this time.
Okay. Would the applicant like to address the traffic study question?
Yeah, I certainly can address that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. There were actually three traffic engineers involved in this initially when traffic counts were arguably higher than they are now. And all three agreed that, yes, it's a bad intersection. I don't even think my client would disagree that they would like to see a light at that intersection, but the warrants don't warrant it, or the state is not allowing it. And, you know, I do land use all over the county, and I hear this argument all the time. You have intersections that are a D or, you know, an E or an F or whatever the standards are, and they're not going to get better by adding more traffic. That's why we're trying to widen roadways and get the state to invest in its infrastructure, but you can't take somebody's land use rights away and take away their as of right ability to build something because it's going to add traffic. You know, you just can't be, it can't be that this one application is the straw that broke the camel's back. It's not, unfortunately, but I do hear what everybody's saying. I just, you know, this is not within our purview.
Dan, any comment on that? Has this come up before? I'm sure it has.
I'm sorry, you asking me or Mr.
Dan, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh,
Who are you
Dan.
asking?
Dan, you.
Has this come up before?
Have these kinds of concerns been common at the planning board meetings in the past?
Yes, and in spite of Mr. Rita's, how should I put this, lack of impression, impression of my memory. I am absolutely certain that this was discussed ad nauseum in the previous iterations of this plan. I even recall that there was some traffic engineer, at least one of the traffic engineers that was involved, that said, if you put up a traffic light, it would save like under a second or some nominal insignificant amount of time to enable people to exit from this location.
Okay.
And as to it being a concern on other applications, I think every application on Hillside Avenue has an issue with traffic and traffic studies. Anything that's been built on Airmont Road, anything that's been built on Sherry Lane, anything that's been built off of 59, it comes up all the time. Of course, it's a problem. Traffic is a problem. The problem is we don't control the solution.
I hear you.
We don't own Hillside, or at least all of it. We don't own Route 59. We don't own Airmont Road. We don't control any of it.
So it says here that the Board of Trustees, or the prior, I guess, agreement was that the Board of Trustees should request a traffic light and it was stated that it was asked for, was requested? Is that something is that how it works? That the Board of Trustees requests a traffic light and then whoever the relevant party is would have to provide it?
I don't
No,
recall
no.
being asked to ask for a traffic light. I think that the town of Ramapo, and I have about, 3 file drawers full of information on the last application, which was subject, obviously, there was a lot of contention, and as Mr. Retta mentioned, there was litigation on that, and probably will be again. But my recollection was that the town had actually sought that out and perhaps even had some money in escrow for it, and they were not able to achieve that result.
Okay, because in the original resolution from the planning board, I guess it's from 2016. That was the part that, Suzanne, that you highlighted in yellow, right?
Yes, I didn't want us to miss putting anything into the record if we needed to, but I'm just looking for it again.
It just says that the village's Board of Trustees is hereby asked to seek approval of the New York State DOT to install a traffic signal at that intersection.
But I don't believe the DOT would do it, as Dan pointed out, because because of the number of warrants. So
Not just the number of warrants. The requirement to construct
construction
the extension of the Debund,
of the Debund,
well, the Debund Avenue extension on the other side where, I don't know, 20 years ago, an applicant came in wanting to put in a car wash.
right?
Yes, that is true.
And that, I think, triggered the DOT's response. Okay, if you're going to do this, then a traffic light would be warranted.
But that's not really in our hands to make
No.
sure.
No, we can't force an applicant to make an application.
And I think the issue is also who is going to maintain and the cost of it all.
Part of the infrastructure.
Mm.
I guess my question was if we would ask the Board of Trustees to make another request, would that have any weight whatsoever, or sounds like it wouldn't?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But
Maybe the highway department can get involved.
Okay, it sounds like the DOT is not interested in this.
But I mean, to be candid, if it's the board's desire to request that the village board seek approval from the DOT for the traffic light, you could do it,
Right, that's what they did last time.
but then it's going to be up to the DOT, not the DOT, the village board, as to whether or not they want to do it. I'm not going to presuppose, that's not my role. Even if they did do it, whether that would have an impact or the DOT would have a change of heart.
Sounds like the assumption is likely not. We can put it in if we want. Can't hurt. Any comments from anybody else on the board?
Well, I don't believe they would do much because I know in the past, the intersections of Christmas Hill and Muncie Heights Road, Cherry Lane and Smith Hill Road, where there were serious accidents and nothing has been done. So
Are those also state roads?
I think that if I remember correctly, it's highway department. They
County.
claim.
No, I
County.
mean, I don't want to go too far afield, but there's a traffic light off of, what's the other side of Cherry Lane?
Spook Rack and Highview.
Thank you.
Spook Rack or
Spook
Highview.
Rock, right by the Spook Rock Industrial Park,
Oh, that blinking light.
that used to be operable. The county owns that road. And the county has said, no, it's the responsibility of the town. The town says, no, it's the responsibility of the village. The village, of course, says it's the responsibility of the county. This has been going on for years and years and years, and no one's done anything about it. But the one thing I can tell you is the village doesn't own it and has no, not only responsibility, but I think even the legal right to do anything with that traffic light, which is located on a county road.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's the same thing by Cherry Lane and Smith Hill. It's a highway.
Okay, so let's move on.
Well, I guess my request would be for a vote tonight. I don't see any reason with the couple of minor comments that have arisen why those couldn't be conditions of final approval and have to be addressed before the site plan is signed. We're not recreating the wheel here. It's basically the same office complex that was approved before. The zoning regulations haven't changed. And the ARB agrees that we're making it nicer looking, and our cut and fill analysis is actually, better under these circumstances. And so I don't see the need to belabor it, but maybe it's because I've been dealing with it for so long. But that would be my request. But obviously, that's up to the board. Thank you so much for hearing us.
Okay.
Have all of the review letters from the involved agencies been read into the record?
I think so, other than, well, we read into the record the fire inspector's letter dated March 29th. We received another letter, the same letter from Town of Ramapo, dated March 21st.
When you say the same letter,
I apologize. I believe they submitted a letter back in January, and it was actually the same letter about a sanitary sewer review.
Yeah.
okay.
So it's the second letter. Rockland GML, Amy went through, dated February 1st. We had Eve's letter from the prior meeting, which she reviewed, had a question. We reviewed Valerie's comment letter. The ARC review. Tallman Fire, we discussed the letters dated March 18th and 23rd. Yes, the previous letter from the Town of Ramapo Public Works was dated January 24th, excuse me. So they did two letters that are fairly the same. The first letter had a few more items, but I believe those items were addressed. So their second letter was shorter. And I think that was everything. Eve confirmed that the ESA waiver was from the previous project. I believe, Eve, you confirmed that that was still good, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And there is not any further encroachment into the wetlands. The remediation of the wetland area that was shown on the previous submission remains the same. But that's actually the elimination of an encroachment and the restoration of the wetlands.
Okay, Eve, I'm not putting you on the spot, but are you in a position to respond to Mr. Rita's, and if I'm mischaracterizing this, Mr. Rita, please, not that I have to ask, tell me if I'm characterizing it correctly. But the requests that you have made, would that require the submission of new plans that would prohibit the board from considering taking action tonight?
No, my intent was to have it for final approval, meaning when CDRC looks at it for final signature. I just had questions due to the fact that that was a new architectural plan. And I was not familiar with the parking under the building. But if there is parking under the building, then that rear area or the east area is at grade. And then that would facilitate ADA access if the door openings were shown. So after it was explained by Rhonda, I understood the plan, and I don't think that's an issue any longer.
Okay, Mr. Rita, do you want to make any further comments based on that?
It seems to me that the board should actually be voting on a complete record. And if they don't, then, you know, they do so at their peril. That's all.
Okay. Now, Lou, you were saying before that you don't recommend parking under the building?
I'm
Correct.
sorry.
I do not recommend parking under the building.
As a general rule?
As a general rule, plus it's going to affect you're going to have to sprinkler under the building, which means a dry system. Because you're going to have cars parked under the building, it's a fire hazard. So if you sprinkle it, now you're making the sprinkler system more complicated, because you'll have a wet system for inside the building and a dry system for under the overhang. I mean, if the spaces aren't needed and they weren't on the site plan, I don't know why it would be necessary to do that, except from a style point of view.
Rhonda, do we have any problem removing those spaces?
Yeah, I believe they did increase the floor area slightly because they had found these new parking spaces. But I'll work with my client and we'll figure out something to make Lou happy. And make it conform.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add, and I'd have to check with the client also, but I know, you know, because of the way that the zoning was interpreted, one has to be a medical office building, and if there are elevators going all the way to the ground floor, there might be some advantage in having some under the building next to the building parking if they can go right in, but I'm not an architect,
Well,
so.
the parking is not going to change. If the parking is still at grade, the building is still at grade. And I'm sure you have a handicapped accessible ramps at that end of the building. So whatever doors and stuff you have under there is not going to change. You just can't use it as a parking area.
Mm-hmm.
It can remain open space.
Right. I mean, you could make it a decorative space. You can make it a seating area, you know, for, you know, put some benches and a decorative plantings under there or whatever, but you really, it's not a good idea to park cars under the building. I mean, especially with the nonsense with, you know, any battery powered vehicles, lithium fires, it's just a bad idea to have, you know, vehicles parked under the building, because then you're going to have to sprinkler it.
If that space isn't going to be paved, or if a portion of it wouldn't be paved, then would that then impact the permeable surface calculation?
No, because it's under the building, so it doesn't matter. The permeable surface is calculated off the roof area, which extends over it anyway.
Okay.
So it's not going to help, but.
So Eve, just to go back to, I guess, Mr. Rita's question, if they were to remove those parking spaces, would that complicate matters? in terms of their attempt to seek final approval tonight?
The plan I looked at, I didn't see parking spaces. That's what the confusion was all about.
Correct.
So the plans I have, there is a new building line shown. And that would be on, let's say, sheet drawing number 2. If you look within the footprint of the building, there's a dashed line. And that's what I was unsure of what was going on back there, because I didn't recall any dashed line before. But there isn't any, as Lou had mentioned, I didn't see any striping that would have designated that there was parking there.
How many parking spaces do they have there?
10.
Did you see it, Lou, on another plan, or was it on the
Yeah,
architecture?
I assumed that based on the architectural, based on the way the space layout was, and then on the rendering, it looks like there's
Oh, I don't,
spots.
okay. I don't have the rendering. That
The
explains
ARC
it. Okay.
render parking.
Yeah, I didn't see any rendering. Thank you.
But the site plan doesn't have any striping or mention of those spaces counting.
No, not at all. That's why I was a little confused.
Yeah, I didn't see any parking under the building either. And I know Rhonda, you're pinch hitting for Justin tonight, but if we didn't indicate them, do we have any problems just saying that we won't have them there, we won't stripe them, we won't install them? And there, you know, as Lou stated, there still can, it's not gonna make a difference on the impervious surface calculation.
But if they included it in the floor space calculation, they're gonna have to
They
adjust
gotta
that.
decrease the floor space. Well, yeah, I guess, or we have to, where was the floor area increased, Rhonda? You know?
You're muted.
Sorry, I was trying to look at the plans to figure out the parking. There was some storage area, mechanical room area in the basement before, when the front wall was buried up against that front wall. That now that they've opened that up and they can get windows in there, they can use that as office space also. That's where they found the new area, floor area.
Okay, anybody else? That's it. Dan, any comments? Is he still here? There he is.
Yeah, Dan's
There he is. Okay, and anybody else on the board have a comment? Is there any reason why we shouldn't vote on final approval tonight? Russell, John, Mordecai, Maurice?
Sounds like it's pretty minor stuff left, unless the parking numbers under the building are causing a major headache.
That's what I'm trying to ascertain. It sounds like not. It sounds like they're not really on the site plan anyway. So. Right.
Well, then there would be a conflict between the architectural plan and the site plan. So there should be consistency between the two document submissions.
It might be, I mean, I know the board's interested in moving forward, but my only concern on this, at this point, it might be best to have the record, the site plan amended, assuming that, you could close, I mean, you could potentially, I don't know if Dan's back yet or not, but you could potentially close the public hearing, with the anticipation to vote, at your next public meeting on this project, with the assumption that those final changes were going to be submitted.
Yeah, but I'd be reluctant to close the public hearing. Then we're on a time clock.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
And you only got a couple people that commented anyway, so I don't think it's gonna be a big deal.
Right, so you could just plan to approve at the next meeting with these final
Yes.
changes being worked into the plan.
Right. So I don't think it's gonna be a long meeting, but I think it would be better if everything agreed. So I would like to have him come back with all the plans complete, in line. Shouldn't take long.
I would tend to agree.
For the record, there's no planning board meeting for April. so
That's
the
what I
next
was just going to
meeting-
ask. Are we missing another month?
But you're gonna be, it's 2 months. There's no planning board meeting for April between Passover and other people's schedules. I could not get a schedule. So the next meeting is May 26th.
If I can just say, I just counted the parking on the site plan. We have 129 spots without any parking under the building. So I would say we're comfortable to just say there's no parking under the building. And the architecture plan should be updated to reflect that.
We can do that as well if the board wants to do that.
Just
too.
because the next meeting is gonna be like almost 6 weeks from now, and it sounds like a minor adjustment from the architect side. And I guess we'll have that before the plan gets reviewed or signed or whatever the process is.
Can we approve based on the new amended site plan?
It sounds like the site plan is not going to change. It's just the architectural review plans, right?
Yeah.
Right, so that's what I meant.
So you could,
If I
It's
might
only
add,
gonna be
if the,
approved.
excuse me, if I might add then, so if the lower level parking is being eliminated, then my initial question about ADA accessibility comes back into play. But I believe it was mentioned the elevator will go to that level. So perhaps the entry foyer with the elevator can be shown on the east face of the building, and that would resolve that issue.
Do we know if that's true?
I believe that's what was said earlier in the meeting.
Yeah,
we can
that's
show
correct.
Is there an
that.
elevator in the
That's
plans?
simple. Yes,
Sorry, what?
we can show that. Yes, we'll make sure that it's clear. And make sure that it matches the architecturals.
And Eve, that would satisfy the ADA requirements.
Yes, yes. Else I would recommend that the ADA stalls were all flipped to the other side of the building, to the west side of the building. But if there is ADA access from the east side, then there's no issue.
Mhm. John, what do you think of that?
I'd like to see the plans finalized.
Yeah, I'm looking at the plans as well, and I don't know, I'm looking at the plans received on March 10th, and it's sheet S2 depicts parking spaces and spots. So, or at least what I'm perceiving to be parking, so that should be correct. So that, everything before us is in agreement and not in conflict.
Right, S2, I believe, are the structural plans that the architect submitted, John, Russ?
Okay.
The question is, can we approve it based on these minor changes? Meaning to say it's only gonna be approved if that has been changed on the site plan. Then can that work?
Well, what I'm hearing is that if we agree to remove the parking spaces and then modify the architectural plans to eliminate the additional floor area we came up with because of those parking spaces, that then the two plans will match and nobody's going to sign off on the site plan unless they do. All of the other issues that were mentioned, I think, have been addressed. And you're going to have your staff looking at this prior to final endorsement in any event. But that's the applicant's lawyer's opinion. We take your lead.
Well, excuse me, while we're updating the plans, can we make sure we put notes on there that the sprinkler system is going to
Oh,
be?
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 100% sprinkler system there.
And the ADA elevator access, all that stuff.
Correct.
Okay, so all this will be a condition of final approval.
Yeah, so the conditions for
Well,
the final approval would be eliminate the additional floor, to update the architectural drawings, to remove the underground parking spaces, to
Did we-
make sure that
I'm sorry to interrupt. Did we close the public hearing yet?
No.
No,
because they're still, Dan, they're still debating whether they want to vote for an approval tonight, based with conditions, or adjourn it
I meant,
until the
I'm
plans are
sorry.
updated.
I misspoke. I meant public comment.
No, we didn't do that either.
Not close anything yet.
All
Just
open.
discussing, and when they determine, then they'll decide what they want to do.
Okay. But usually, even if you're not going to act, if the public has had, if everyone who wanted to speak has already spoken.
Yes, they already did the public comments, remember?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
He's saying we should close the public comment section. Okay, we can do that.
Can I say one thing before it closes? Is that all right? Miss Melly made a statement about something, and I'd like to comment, if that's okay.
If you could do it quickly, sure.
I sure will. Thank you. Miss Melly, you made a statement that you can't stop anyone from developing their land, which is true, but nothing trumps health and safety. And that kind of traffic is a health and safety issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now I think I'm gonna make a motion to close the public comment.
you're gonna close it?
Public comment.
The public comment, not the public hearing.
Okay. Usually we don't
I'll
do that.
second.
Okay.
Okay, I don't think we don't have we need a motion for that?
No.
No, just gonna, okay. So where were we? I think Valerie was talking about the conditions of approval.
Yeah, I was just finalizing the condition. So the conditions of approval will be that the site plans will match the architectural plans will be updated to match the site plans, that eliminate the underground parking spaces, that ADA requirements must be met for the elevator access, sprinkler system, a note for the sprinkler systems will be added to the site plan. And those are the 4 conditions that I have. Is there anything else? Did I miss anything?
You've had
I think
conditions.
there was a reduction in the floor area
Yeah,
that was added when the parking was added.
okay. So adjust the floor area.
Correct.
Along with our standard conditions
Yes.
of compliance with agency comments, doing this a new stormwater management agreements. I think we might. need a
Yeah,
new
you have an
stormwater
updated.
management agreement.
You have an
they
updated
submitted
one,
one
don't
with
you?
the SWIP.
Yeah,
There is-
okay. I
Correct.
have it.
There's a new one in there in the SWIP, but it's substantially similar to the previous design. So it may just have to be redated. That's about it.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else from the applicant?
No, thank you for hearing us tonight.
Okay. So Dan, if we're gonna vote for final approval, is there one thing we're voting on tonight? Just the site plan approval?
Correct.
Okay. Fine, if there's no more comment from the members of the board, I would make a motion to close the public hearing and for 10 South Debund LLC. And
That's it.
that's it. Should we do a roll call vote, Suzanne?
Well, we need a second.
I need
I'll
a
second it.
Is that John?
Yes.
Okay, roll call vote. John Cornelius.
I'll vote yes.
Okay. Russell Hawk,
Yes.
Mordecai Grimberger,
Yes.
Maurice Roth,
Yes.
Chairman Freeland.
Also, yes.
Okay.
No,
All in favor, motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening.
have a good night.
Yes.
So are we gonna vote on the application?
Yeah, I mean.
No, no, I thought you just did.
Didn't we? I'm
No.
sorry.
No, we just
No,
closed
they-
the
Oh, we
public
just
hearing.
voted to close the public hearing.
Yeah,
That's
no,
all.
no, that was.
I
So
thought
if you
you
wanna
got
go,
you
I
voted-
guess it's
you voted
okay.
to approve the
And you're like-
application as well.
Have a good night.
Okay,
Wow.
I apologize. I thought that you basically, they stated two things and you said, yes, that's all you have to do. And there was a combined emotion.
Too good to be true.
How many of these have you done?
Apparently not enough.
Okay,
So the next motion will be to approve the site plan with all the conditions, or
The ones that Valerie mentioned before.
Yes,
right, and the ones, I think Eve mentioned another one, or Valerie included that.
yes,
All
I did.
so it's
And
five,
the
five
standard-
conditions.
Okay,
And the standard conditions as well.
That's correct.
so that's everything.
Mhm,
That would cover everything.
yes.
Okay, so
I'll second it.
Well, let's be clear, Mr. Chairman, did you form that in?
yes, so let's do that. Let me do that
as a
again.
Motion?
Yes, I didn't. So let me do that again. So I will make a motion to approve the site plan for 10 South Debund LLC with all the conditions that were aforementioned.
I'll second it.
All in
Okay.
favor? Aye.
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 None opposed?
Yes, none opposed.
Okay, so now we need an actual vote.
You just did.
You just did that.
All right,
Yes, did that.
I was
was the
thinking I
vote?
was losing my mind.
We just
No
Now
more
I'm
votes.
confused.
I thought we voted on making the motion. We actually voted on the application?
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
the
You have my
motion was
yes.
approve the application and we all agreed.
Okay, so then yes, I'm a yes. Okay. Now I think we can say goodnight.
Now I think.
Ah,
Good evening. Enjoy the holidays.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
You as
Have a
well.
good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Right. Okay,
And now we're considering one more public hearing. This is
Yeah.
Stage LLC, 124 Route 59. Make the motion to continue that public hearing.
I'll second.
All right, I am in favor. Okay, Mr. Baum, you're up.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you. Paul Baum with Sarajian and Baum, attorneys for the applicant. When we were here last month, one of the things that the board wanted to wait for was the additional review from the county pursuant to the GML. We have received that review letter dated March 10th. It's very similar to the prior reviews that they did. And we submitted a supplemental narrative addressing the disapproval by the county as well as some of their recommendations. So if the board would like to go through those comments by the GML, or whether you'd want to do something else, The board did grant us the negative declaration at the last meeting. And except for the GML, I think we're ready for an approval. So we're requesting that you override the GML's disapproval of the project.
Just to be clear, this application is for both site plan and a special permit.
Correct. Yes.
So it would require two approvals, two separate approvals.
So if you like, Mr. Chairman, I'll address the county's disapproval letter of March 10th, 2022. We responded in my narrative. They're recommending that the project be disapproved because this development represents an excessive overdevelopment of the parcel that's not suited for warehouse, and that the property developed in a manner that is consistent with the village's requirements. We went to the Zoning Board of Appeals, as you know. We received all our variances, and those variances were a recognition by the zoning board that this use was appropriate, that it wasn't going to have any impacts on the character of the community, and that we were entitled to the variances. And when the county says this is an excessive overdevelopment, we pointed out to the zoning board, and the zoning board acknowledged and agreed that any single use in this zone was require the same variances that we're seeking for this use. This property cannot be developed in accordance with the zoning code, and the use is consistent with the zoning code. So when the county makes this statement that the use is not appropriate or not consistent, we're clearly consistent with the code. The code allows the warehouse use in the LO zone, and it's not an excessive overdevelopment. Many of these conditions were existing conditions. A few variances were granted for side yard and setback and buffer requirements. And the board acknowledged that variances were previously granted by the zoning board back in 2006. And I believe I submitted the Zba Override Resolution, and the comments that the Zba overrode were very similar to the comments that the county just made on this GML review letter. The board noted that the use is allowed under the code, and that variances were granted in 2006, and that the use is appropriate. Zone change or a comprehensive plan was reviewed in 2018. They didn't change the zoning. They didn't change the permitted uses in this zone, and this use is appropriate, and it's not inconsistent, and it's not an excessive overdevelopment. And we received all our variances, and that the grant of these variances make this lot now conforming. The fact that the ZBA approved these setbacks makes this now a conforming lot and a conforming use and a conforming development with the zoning code. So I urge the board to override that basis for disapproval by the county. With regard to the second comment, they say that the application must be disapproved to maintain the integrity of the zoning ordinance. Well, I don't know what that means. The integrity of the zoning ordinance is it's an LO zone. It allows warehouse uses. We're making use of the warehouse. We got our variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals for the non-conforming bulk conditions. And all of the potential impacts, these countywide concern impacts on traffic and infrastructure have all been examined by the board's consultants, and a negative declaration was rendered that none of these impacts were going to be significant and everything could be appropriately handled. And therefore, I urge the board to override this second basis for disapproval by the county. So, and then when the board goes on and they issue some comments, and we have no objection to comments with the exception of 3 of them. Comment number 7 by the county deals with the a review being completed by the Rockland County Office of Fire Emergency Services or the fire inspector, and we have no objection to that, but they do want us to comply with the conditions of the Tolman Fire District's letter of February 22nd, 2022. And we discussed that at the last meeting, and we have no objection to the Tolman Fire Department's letter. They found the maneuverability was adequate, but they had recommended a per se requirement on sprinklers. And our position was, well, if the building needs to be sprinkled under the building code, then we'll sprinkler it. And then your building inspector, Lou Zumo, had a good idea. We have no objection to that he says, based upon the final review and considering the uses and the occupancy loads and the ability to fight fire and the other criteria that they look at, that if it's determined that sprinklers are required, then we'll install them. So I would recommend or urge the board to override the per se requirement of sprinklers and leave it up to the building inspector and the fire inspector to make that determination based upon all the factors under state law to make sure that the building is safe and the use and occupancy of the building will be within public health. The other comments were.
That objection is in your narrative?
That objection, yes, is in my narrative. It's, again, it's number 7.
I don't have that. Was there an updated narrative? The one I have is dated February 17th.
Yeah, we submitted an updated narrative dated March 21st, 2022.
I didn't get that.
No, I have this one dated the 17th.
I never got anything, Paul.
Yeah, Paul, we didn't get this.
I sent several emails asking if they
No,
were.
and I sent it to you. And I think you even responded saying, thank you. Rachel, do you recall that?
I thought so. I have it in mind. I'm looking now to see.
Okay, I honestly then missed it. I did not see it because I kept saying, if you're gonna have a response, I need it to put in the packets, and I didn't get,
Yeah,
I can't check now.
I sent it the next day.
What day would that have
What date
been?
would that- I'll look on my phone.
I'm looking right now here.
Would you have sent it to me as well?
It looks like it was sent on March 21st at 4:56 p.m. It didn't go to Paul. It went to Suzanne, me, and Larry.
All right, so it wouldn't be in my email.
Yeah, it was sent on March.
I just pulled up all the emails from you.
I can just forward it to you now, Suzanne.
Yeah, could you? Because the last email I have from Paul was from March 18th. Thank you, Suzanne. Did Lou have a review? But that was on a different project.
All right, I just forwarded it to you.
Okay.
Well, that certainly puts
apologize.
a damper on things. But it'll be distributed to, and if Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I just want to go through the couple other overrides. One was on lighting. They had made a recommendation that the candle lumens be less than 0.01 at the property line. That's inconsistent with your code. Your code requires for a foot candle of a maximum of 0.06 at the property line, and we meet your code. So they're trying to impose a greater condition upon us than your code requires. So we would ask that you override that since we do meet the village's lighting requirement. And then the last comment from them was that we're looking for an override was comment number 18, which says the proposal shall provide a landscape buffer along the eastern property line. And along that eastern property line, there's just no room to put any sort of landscaping. It's very narrow strip between the retaining wall and the adjacent property owner. There's no opportunity to landscape in that area. The applicant has indicated that he will approach Mr. Hirsch next door, and if Mr. Hirsch gives his consent, we have no objection putting landscaping along the property line. But the way it is right now, there's just no opportunity to landscape there because the strip is just not adequate. So those were the three overrides that we had requested from their comments, in addition to the override of their basic disapproval. And I'm sorry that you didn't get my narrative, and but it was sent in. But I know
I apologize.
lots of emails, and I don't falter for
very sorry.
not getting that distributed to the board as we had requested. So
I'm just curious, the numbering is one number off. So we must be missing a GML comment here in our version of the narrative. Right, this is a GML back from 2019, right?
No, there's a new GML letter, Mr. Chairman, from March 10th, 2022. That's what we were waiting for when we were here last month.
Do we have that, Suzanne?
Yes, that was with the landscaping plan.
Yeah, it's in the packet.
It's in the packet.
Okay.
So that was the letter that we responded to with our March 21st review letter that you don't have. But as I pointed out initially, that the basis for their denial is the same reason that they denied it the last time around. And so it really didn't change. And I had submitted a GML response to their last denial letter from June 2019. And it's pretty much the same reasons. So there's no significant change with regard to that.
Okay.
But yes, they had raised a couple other issues, and they did renumber some of their comments so that the last narrative is going to be inconsistent with the March 10th.
All right, it's just one.
2022 review letter from the
It's
county.
7. I think I had it at 6, which means I'm missing one GML comment.
Wait, say that again?
What Mr. Baum said was a response to GML comment number 7 in the 2019 version of the GML. That must have been comment number 6.
Oh, yes.
So there's one comment that I don't see here, but you said I do have the GML somewhere, so I have to find it. This is the 2019 one.
Dated March 10th, 2022.
It was in my packet also?
Yes. It was with there's a landscaping page.
This one?
Yeah, it was with that.
Well, I took them all apart when I went through it. Okay. Yeah, I'll look for it. So I'm just curious, maybe there's a question for Valerie with the lighting. So Rockland County has stricter lighting standards than in the village of Airmont, the 0.1 versus the 0.6.
Yes, I mean, the plans themselves met the code, the village's code.
Sorry, the plan, What's that?
The plan met the village's code.
The village's code.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. But it is a fact.
I don't think Rockland County has, they don't have official standards. It's their recommendations.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, their recommendations are really unreasonable because I don't know of any code that mandates a 0.1 candle lumen at the property line. It just provides for an extremely dark lighting plan.
Okay.
That comment, Mr. Chairman, was the same as their prior comment, which was number 13. It's 13, so that one didn't change.
Right. I have that as 13.
Yeah.
Right. I see your response to that. Okay. Okay.
So,
yes, sorry, I'm just trying to get myself together here. Okay, where it is.
so what are their new comments? As I indicated, was their requirement to provide a landscape buffer along the eastern property line, which is number 18 of their new comment. They didn't have that comment previously.
I thought there was something.
That one I have, the landscape buffer requirement. Okay. It's fine. Yeah, I'm not gonna drag this out. Okay. Any questions from anybody on the board?
Yeah, a couple questions. For number 7, regarding the sprinklers, and I think if what you said was that the intent was to have the determination by the fire inspector, I think, and was it the building inspector?
Yes, that was Lou's recommendation at the last meeting, and we agree with that. So they'll take a final review of the building plans once they're submitted. And if they determine, as Lou indicated, based upon the uses and the occupancy loads and the ability to fight fire and the other criteria mandated by state law, if they determine that sprinklers are required, then we'll install sprinklers. If they determine that sprinklers are not required, we don't want to be forced to put them in just because the county had recommended that they be installed. And the fire department recommended that they be installed. So we're happy to leave it into the hands of your building inspector and fire inspector.
Okay.
And Lou, that came from you, right? That was your recommendation last time.
Yeah,
right?
that was.
Okay, just confirming.
So Lou, if the fire inspector says yes and you say no, what happens?
I beat him up.
There you go. Good man.
The only acceptable
No
answer.
reason for both of, if he believes it to be true, if he'll convince me or I'll convince him, but either way it'll work out. And we're gonna look for some input from the fire department as well, but I know what they want already, so we'll just have to see, because we're dealing in theoreticals right now. We really don't know what's gonna be in those buildings or how they're gonna be used, so.
But that use could change over time too.
It can. So I would err in the side of caution, and depending on the size of the area and the possible fire load, I would err towards the installing of the sprinkler system while the buildings are being built. It's the cheapest time to install it.
Okay.
Again, we have no objection with that. I mean, I just don't want to install them as a per se requirement when, they may not be required by law. So, and I'm very happy to leave it in the hands of the village's fire and building inspector to make that determination when we submit our building plans.
Okay.
And sorry if I may, my only other concern is number 18. In terms of consideration for the neighbor, I mean, it's kind of I understand the situation, but it is, to a degree, it's a self-created issue where you're paving right up to the property line because there's 0 setback, right? And I know you got your variance for that, but you're stating that you will reach out to the landowner to basically see if they or he would permit you to, if he's even interested in landscaping to shield the property. What remedy is available to us to ensure that that happens, whether or not the landowner wants landscaping or doesn't want landscaping, or if he does, that the landscaping is adequate. Because my concern is for the disturbance to the neighbors as a result of this development, which I tend to agree with Rockland County. It's 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag.
Oh, Mr. Hawk, these aren't really significant buildings. I mean, we're talking about two small buildings that both under 3,000 square feet. We had to, I'm sorry, we pushed them as to the property line to the west so that we have ample roadway for entering and exiting. We have a 24-foot aisle, and we're required to have that. So I don't know what we're going to be able to do landscaping there if we only have about 1 foot of area between the curb line and the property line. I don't know how we can landscape that. I mean, we're happy to try and do something, but if we can't do it because of the restrictions on the site, it's very difficult to put anything in there.
Let me ask a clarifying question that maybe I misunderstood. Number 18, landscape buffer along the eastern property line. If I recall in the previous, and if I'm dredging up something that's no longer an issue, please let me know. But I thought the issue was the paved area between the buildings on the western side. Was there not a comment to shield headlights and whatnot from?
That was the one that was the fire department, but we extended the turnaround. There was some landscaping at the end of the little turnaround on the side. That's the west side though, and that was to the other commercial parking lot. But the fire department had requested that we extend the turnaround as long as we possibly could. So there is now there's no room at the end of it for landscaping. This is on the side next to Hirsch, kind of like if you were standing on 59, it's the right side. And then we are providing, based on the ZBA, a buffer in the rear to the residential Indian Rock townhouses.
Okay, so to the west side of your property is another commercial property, is that correct?
It is
Yes.
part of this same LO zone. So it
Okay.
is not a residential zone.
It's
Okay,
an office building, yeah.
is that where, like, I know I'm dating myself, but decades ago, was that like something called Churchill Securities or something? That building?
Yeah, I think it was,
I
yeah.
think
Remember
these
that.
properties were the Churchill Securities, if I recall. I'm not sure if it was the office building to the west. I believe that these three properties or our property, the property to the east, and the properties to the east of that, I think those were the Churchill Securities, and Gerald Hirsch was one of the principal of Churchill Securities. So,
Okay.
and his son is the one that owns that one lot that's between our two projects, the one at 130 Route 59 and this one at 124.
Okay. Okay, so I guess just, again, back to my original question. I mean, the assumption would be then that we're taking it upon good faith that you're going to extend an offer to the landowner to landscape that lot line.
If you want to mandate it to be a condition, and we can report back to the board, I mean, we don't have any right to go on there. If he give us the right, we would absolutely install landscaping and, meet with Valerie and Eve, as well as Mr. Hirsch, and put some appropriate landscaping along that property. We have no objection doing that at all. We just can't fit it in to that little gap that's shown there.
Right, I understand.
Now, one of the things that this board's not privy to that we we indicated the zoning board of appeals, that was part of our application for the variances, is my client, Larry Turco, Stage Street Associates, they originally were going to buy all these parcels. 124, Mr. Hirsch's parcel, and then the one at 130. And they were on the contract to buy it. On the site plan, it's, you know, it's shown as lot 18. And there was a problem in the bankruptcy court, and the trustee did not sell him the property, and they went through motion practice and litigation in the bankruptcy court to try and buy this property for Mr. Hirsch. But they weren't able to obtain it because the bankruptcy court ruled against them, and Mr. Hirsch ended up owning this property that separated these 3 lots. Otherwise, we would have had, you know, one big project instead of, you know, these 2 projects. We're not really happy about having a smaller project here on lot 17, but this is the property that we own, and we're trying to make the best of it. And we thought that these 2 structures, less than, you know, 3,000 square foot building, so it's probably only going to be a single use building, was very, fit in with the area, and the zoning board felt that way as well. So we would have liked to have owned lot 18. We would have liked to have done one big project, but this is the way that it came down, and we couldn't own it. So we would certainly agree. And if you want to fathom some sort of a resolution with regard to how that could be approached, we'd absolutely agree to landscape there if we're allowed to do it. And we wish we had some more room to do it. But, you know, Mr. Hirsch is living in an LO zone, and, you know, really can't object that much when he fought to maintain this property in LO zone to live here. So I understand we want to protect him, and we have no problem trying to do that, but we physically can't.
Okay.
What is proposed to separate between the 2 properties?
Well,
Fence
there's
of
no
some sort?
subdivision, right?
What?
Nothing at this point. It will,
Curb?
I don't know how high up the retaining wall is going to come, Rachel. Does that, how high up above the grade does that come up, you know?
The retaining wall starts behind where his house is, so it's not in line with his house. And the retaining wall is only about 2 feet high for most of it. It doesn't get higher until, even still, it's only like 2 or 3 feet in the back. But it's not a significant difference.
How about some sort of, let's say, green fencing, if that's what Mr. Hirsch would want?
The only problem that we had that we saw from the fencing was from a practical standpoint. As you know, we've asked for a couple waivers from the board. One of the waivers was the size of the loading berths, and we're limiting the size of trucks that can come in and out of this area. And our only concern was, if we do have a fence there and a vehicle backs up, sometimes the rear of the truck or the front of the truck may extend over the curb line and strike the fence. And we didn't want to create an obstacle or something that would impair the truck vehicles pulling in and out. And that was the only reason why we didn't think a fence would have been a reasonable solution for screening. And it really wouldn't have done anything from a noise point of view, maybe just from a sight point of view, but we thought it would be more of a hindrance than a help.
And it was indicated that Mr. Hirsch uses it as a residence. He lives there?
Yes, he does. At least he did. Whether he still lives there today, I don't know, but when we were before the zoning board of appeals, he came in and he did live there, and he did voice objections with regard to the project.
So I don't know if that's something that we as a board want to stipulate or mandate, but I would like to have some sort of, I guess, agreement that, you know, there's going to be at least the offer to put some sort of a shielding or screening, sorry, between this project and his property. I don't know, I would defer, I don't know, Dan, if that's, you know, I don't know if we want to mandate that. I don't know if that's appropriate, because obviously the applicant doesn't own property. It would be up to, you know, some sort of an agreement between the two parties, if he would even want it, who knows? I don't know if this has been done before. I'm just kind of thinking, you know, trying to protect, you know, if I was
Well-
living there, I wouldn't want headlights, you know, and all that stuff in my face all the
I
time.
mean, it's not a perfect example, but on Dunkin' Donuts, there's an agreement for plantings and planting maintenance and other aspects tied into an easement, but it's a private property matter, not something that the village would appropriately get involved in. But I don't think that there would be anything improper to ask that the applicant approach the neighbor about the potential to enter into such an arrangement.
And I have no objection doing that, and I will write a letter, and I will, you know, copy of the village and Mr. Krashauer and send it to Mr. Hirsch, asking for permission to install landscaping on his property and asking him to meet with us and to, you know, work something out. And I know we tried doing it at the Zoning Board of Appeals. And, you know, Mr. Hirsch came in and he voiced his objection, and we agreed. Mr. Turco made many offers to meet with him and to discuss it with him. And, you know, he said, I don't want to meet with you. So, but we're willing to keep trying. I mean, it's for his best interest, and maybe now that he knows the project looks like it's coming to fruition and that we have all our variances, maybe he'll be more than, you know, more willing to come to the table and discuss it. So, but again, we have no problem doing it, and I will certainly make every effort to meet with him and to come to an agreement, and we will install something there if he agrees.
Thank you.
Looking back, is there a possibility of perhaps installing a fence except where the trucks would back up? It looks like his house is much closer to the street than your turnaround. Is that the
For
area-
that turnaround, but
the parking
there are
spot?
still parking spaces that would be in line with his house.
Well,
So,
I mean, we could, listen, the truck is, if the truck comes in, he's going to park in the loading berth.
That's the space between the two buildings, right?
No, the loading berth is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots in.
Oh, I see that, where it says
the
loading,
first
yeah.
Building, yeah. So, I mean, we certainly don't have a problem putting up a fence till we get back to that loading berth.
That seems like it would protect his house from any sight lines.
Yeah, if the board is that. I know there's different height requirements for fences when they're in the front yard. Lou, can we go 6 feet there at that point? Do you have the site plan in front of you by any chance? Rachel, can you bring it up?
This too also would be contingent upon Mr. Hirsch's agreement to have that installed too, I would assume, right?
Well, the board has the power to make us do it, so yeah, so
But that would be on your property.
that would be on our property, so we can absolutely install a fence there if the board wants, right along where Rachel's pointing, right up to where the, coming north to where the loading berth, and stop right there at the loading berth. That would provide some shielding, and I don't think it would interfere with the truck, so I have no problem doing that with the board, or the landscaping if Mr. Hirsch wants it, which I think would look much better from his standpoint. If we can go a couple feet onto Mr. Hirsch's property, we can put a nice array of trees and arborvitae or some other types of good screening hedges along there. Or we can do the fence, whatever the board prefers.
If you do the landscaping, Paul, who maintains it?
We would agree to maintain it as long as he gave us access to it.
Okay.
So, I mean, it'd be more than the installation. Like Dan said, we'd have to have some sort of an easement agreement that he gives us this easement to plant the trees and to come on his property to maintain them and prune them and replace them as needed. Because if we didn't have that easement, if we planted them, once they died, we have no right to go on there. We can't maintain them, we'd be trespassing.
Yep, area.
But, we can, if the board wants to say, listen, I'll make the offer, and if he doesn't agree to the landscaping, we would agree to put that fence on there. Question is, where do you want it to start and where is it gonna end?
Yeah, I assume Mr. Hirsch is not on this call, Suzanne?
There is someone named Laptop with his hand. up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't know who the laptop is. Would you like me to find
Yeah,
out?
that's me. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Hi, Mr. Hirsch. How are
Hi,
you?
yeah, of course I hear everything. And a lot of
Mr.
stuff
Hirsch,
I wish
good.
I didn't hear because it's a lot of lies. But, and first of all, as far as what's important, I think there should be a fence, like maybe a 6-foot fence. I don't know if they can make them taller. All Mr. Turco's other properties have that, where they have all these trucks coming in and out. If you see aerial views of his other properties that has these trucks, you really don't want this project there, but it is zoned that he's allowed to do it, so I can't argue with that. But, well, after he got all his variances, but there's plenty of animosity. First of all, Churchill Securities has never ever owned 126 Route 59. There's a lot of animosity, even like with Miss Baris 2 meetings ago, when she claimed that she couldn't believe that I was still living there, made that comment. Like, I've owned that property, my family and I've owned that property before she was born. So I'm not sure where that comes from, except they think because they couldn't buy my property from someone that didn't own my property. That's what happened. That's why I was in court with them. I was never bankrupt ever in my life. I was in that court at the Southern District Court because they were trying to take my house. And they couldn't because they don't own it. And the person trying to give it to them didn't own it. So let's get off that. The border, I would think it would be a good idea maybe and I want to thank Eve Mancuso and Mr. Hawk. And even at the time, 2 meetings ago, when Mr. Baum said he didn't think it would be an issue, that they could put like maybe a fence, like one of those 6-foot plastic high fences, that kind of screening where, the lights, everything, I wouldn't have to see the trucks as easily. And the one thing that disturbed me a little bit also is when, and maybe this is true, this will happen, when Mr. Baum said that they didn't want to fence at certain areas because when the trucks turn around, they might hit the fence. Well, what if I have somebody on my property? Are they going to hit the person on my property because they don't see them behind them? Like they don't see the fence? Like, that's why this whole project, as Mr. Hawk said, he said it differently this time, but he said once, it's like trying to get 20 pounds into a 10-pound bag. This time, I think he said 10 pounds into a 5-pound bag. I think the other one was more correct. But this project is really way too big for this. There's other issues that are involved too, but they don't affect me as much. And that's like all this blacktop and all these buildings. A lot of engineers refer to when you do that, it causes accelerated runoff, which isn't just your normal runoff. Plus all these trees that can soak up they're going to have to remove that soak up 100 to 300 gallons of water a day. There's already flooding on 120's property on their parking lot, bad flooding, like it's covered with water. And then if you go down to the apartments, that used to be, when I was there, when I was a kid, I used to skate on the ice there because it was a pond. It was like a lake. Now it's Lackawanna Trail. They're still having flooding issues because that property never should have been built either, technically, because of that. But with this accelerated runoff, with all this paving and these rooftops, all that water is going to go. They could dig a hole to China. That water is going into that property next door. I think Miss Bree said at one time that that you can't make it worse than it already is. If there's already flooding there, there's flooding. I would say if their basements are filled to the windows and the top, then now it's going to be onto their first floor or higher. So I think there will be a big difference, but we can't really argue that point already. They got their variances from the zoning board for that aspect, I believe. I don't know if this board has any say in that anymore, but as far as what Ms. Mancuso and Mr. Hawk said, and originally Mr. Baum agreed to, although the last meeting, I believe he recanted and said, since it's LO zoning, we really don't need that. I think definitely if there was a fence put on the border between my property and his property, I would be okay with that. Obviously, landscape of my property is work for me, that they shouldn't be on my property in the first place. There's too much animosity between us. And the fact that just that they really don't want me there, obviously, but I've lived there for many, many years. Churchill Mortgage also and Churchill Securities have never owned my property. They've never had a mortgage on my property. I paid the mortgage and it was never to them. It was never to anybody that had anything to do with them. The house was bought from Mr. Bloom years ago, and it has nothing to do with Churchill Securities. So the fence would be nice. It could be like one of those white plastic fences. If they hit it, they can fix it, but at least it's there. And it would give me some screening with the lights, even though, during these applications, they did say the lights have to point down, but even 120's light right now is blaring straight across. And it's ridiculous. So maybe Mr. Turco's property will block that, but I'm not sure. But anyway, basically I was just calling in, really it was about the border with the fence. If they put the fence on the border, they don't have to worry that there is no room there. Obviously there's no room. Oh, that's the other thing with the, I think Mr. Francesco in the zoning board meeting brought this up. It's not really even 0 side yard because the side yard actually overlaps. It's actually a negative number, but they got the permit, they got the variance on that. So the point is moot on that. But anyway, I'd almost want the back of the buildings to my house and have the driveway towards the commercial side so that there's no trucks near my property. It's all the back of the buildings. But I mean, then I'm not asking, then I'd be asking you to change your whole project. So I think a fence would be good. The white ones, the more privacy, the better, obviously. So I think those, I don't know if you can go 8 foot. I can't remember what his fences are at his other properties, which are also in commercial zoning. One in Suffern and one in, I forgot the name of the town. But anyway, you can look it up. Anyway, I guess that's how I feel. Just if they put a fence there on the border, they don't have to go on my property. They can drive, pave right up to the fence on their side of the property. They won't have to fix any shrubbery on my property. The shrubbery is really not going to block anything anyway, unless you put like tall, pine, it's not going to work. It'd be better if it was just a fence. This way people can't walk through onto my property. Thank you. That's all I have to say, I believe. Unless someone has a question for me, but.
Thank you.
So I guess,
We'll put up a fence.
okay.
We'll put
All
up a
right.
fence. We would
Fence
just,
wins.
And
we would
Lou,
just
it
like
needs
to-
to be 4 feet in the front setback, correct? And then it can be 6.
Yeah, that's true. Forward of the front setback, it should be 4 feet or less, but then from there back 6. But it looks like your buildings and his buildings are very close in line. So if you went from that line as the setback, you might be able to go 6 all the way back, but you need plenty of room at the front for line of sight of the road too.
Yeah,
So.
well, it's not gonna go past the DSL at the closest.
Mhm.
So if we go 4 feet from the DSL to where the building starts and then go 6 feet from that point back to where the loading berth is, for warehouse A,
I would suggest you take into account the sight line and put that on the plan.
Yeah, I
and
can
then you
add that and make
determine
sure.
The final height, I'm not even sure 4 feet would work with sight lines, so.
The
that's
DSL is
something-
pretty far back.
Okay, that's
So-
something you'll have to evaluate, because remember,
Yeah.
you do have a sloping property as well. Right, so
This one's not as bad as the other one.
not quite as bad. Yeah, you leveled it out a little bit.
Thank you. No
Thank you,
further
Mr.
questions.
Hirsch.
Now, how about bringing the fence even further back, even behind the loading dock? How much of concern is it that the Mr. Hirsch was bringing up, that if the trucks back up into a fence, then they're backing up really onto his property?
That's why the
I-
fence is a good
I
idea.
don't know how to respond to that. I mean, listen, truck drivers, some of them are very cautious, some of them are not. Some of them pull into bollards, some of them smack into overhangs. And even with an 18-foot truck, there's got to be at least 2 or 3 foot overhang. So, if they back up and that overhang of the rear of the truck smacks into the fence, we wanted to avoid that.
They'll have to pay for it.
Can I ask
Get it fixed.
the board a question? With everything that you're hearing that needs to be looked into, revised, talking to neighbors about plantings and easements and all the other things that I've heard. Does anyone think anything could be accomplished tonight?
I don't think the planting and the easements sound like they're going to be a possibility. Sounds like Mr. Hirsch is pretty